My lecture is in a connection with a situation in Serbia during the COVID-19 pandemic. And after a few introduction words about constitutional and legal regulation in Serbia, according to the state of emergency and special situation which we call emergency situation, I will take attention to the different kind of paradoxes during that period, from which we can conclude that almost nobody, even the legal experts, don't know which rule is exist and which rule not exist. Some common evaluations. If we know pandemic as other kind of disasters, always ask the country which is in the main interest. Would we like to protect the legal system at all, or would we like to protect lives and country? In that relationship, we very rarely in a position to be in some kind of equilibrium. And if we put in the first interest protection of lives and country at all, then we must break some rules of constitution and legal order at all. In Republic Serbia, we have a few kind of states of crisis. State of war, that is a common things and now is not topic. But interesting is differences between state of emergency and we call it vanredno stanje in Serbia, and emergency situation. State of emergency is sometimes very serious situation in which functioning of state is in a very big problem, if I can evaluate on that way. But emergency situation also can be proclaimed by the government, but also by the provincial government and municipality. What was interesting in this period in Serbia, because we have a parallel system of state of emergency and emergency situation. Some municipalities proclaimed emergency situation, some they wasn't do that, and in that parallel system it's very difficult to find which law exists. Also, maybe that is a problem for Serbia, and we find it now, that Serbia, there is no, on the legal system, on the statute system, procedure which completely will regulate that emergency needs. We have only we have a statute which proclaimed the war, but nothing else. And because of that, we was in situation that Ministry of War or Defense make proposal to this situation which is connected with pandemic, which is a nonsense. Okay, that was the differences of terms. some constitutional limitations according to the fundamental rights and freedoms. Maximum duration of limitation of human rights during the state of emergency is 6 months. National Assembly, Parliament, our Parliament, have a jurisdiction for that, but only if can convene. If cannot convene, then government will enact that measures. And it's important that in our constitution exist 17 human rights. We call it absolute rights, which can't restrict it in a state of crisis. But of course, in the praxis, it was different. My colleague, Professor Darko Simovic, put some dilemmas about declaration of state of emergency. I think that that is important, not only for Serbia, but in a common sense. Emergency state was introduced before the proclamation of epidemic. That the question is, what was the reason for that? That is some kind of paradox. Also, as a conditions which must be fulfilled for the state of emergency, in that list there is no virus, there is no epidemic as a reason. We have some kind of political dilemma because parliamentary elections was scheduled for the April before the pandemic, and there is no possible to postpone that elections if we not proclaim the state of emergency. Probably that was some kind of political move. Then state of emergency was seen from the opposition political parties, probably, as a political move of Minister of Defense, because he is not competencies in a health area, but he was a person who made that proposal. National Assembly was unable to convene to confirm the state of emergency. That was obligation according to the constitution. But it's interesting that our parliament don't show the will, political will to be in convene. And that is some kind of self-marginalization, if I can say like that, which is very strange. Almost of a total of 250 deputies, only 5 of them asked to Parliament to convene. And then that decision of state of emergency didn't have a period in which state of emergency will be lasted, which is not according to the law. Some dilemmas. Then in this part of my teach, it will be different examples of paradoxes, which is probably some of them very strange. For example, that is a general evaluation that you must be expert, but it's not enough, but can try, if you are a legal expert, to make a knowledge what is legal or what illegal in that period, and of course people who are not lawyers completely were disorientated. For example, we had very different regulation on the lesser level of the community. Each opština I gradovi, municipalities had their procedure and their regulation according to the pandemic, without any datas, without any proofs and I can say logics. And then in two villages, for example, in the same time with a similar situation according to the pandemic, you have a completely different rules. For example, in one village you can't play the football matches, and then that local football team must go to the neighborhood to be a part in a football match. But that is probably some colorit of paradoxes. But some of them produced very serious consequences, because people didn't know the rules and not in a situation to learn or to know rules, because they are not issued. That was some kind of secret rules, and then they punished for that sometime very strictly. For example, we have the first person who broke self-isolation, whatever that is mean. And it was in a practice that police officer call you in your flat, and if you don't answer, they concluded that you break your self-isolation rule, and prosecutor start with a procedure, and court punished that person with a 3 years sentences in a prison, and that was very strict, and then we have cases in which completely no competent institution or persons handled with a different kind of sanctions in a state of emergency. For example, about misdemeanor, that is in a jurisdiction of sanitary inspectors, but Serbia in that time had only 4 of them, I think so, only 4. And of course, communal police start to handle it with that, without any rule which will be based on the that behavior. Some special problem was probably some kind of discrimination with elder persons who in one period were in a total lockdown, and after, I don't know, 1 week or more, they got permission to have a 1 or 2 hours, but in a very early morning, to go to the market, and only that. But if we think that our citizens in that ages are very sensitive and social beings, it's a question that state on that way keep their life or push them to finish their life faster. One paradox which is more or less formal but very important is that on this, I think so, yes, that we have some kind of experts team that is a crisis response team, which was, I can say, a total authority during that period, or probably government would like to stay without that crisis response team, but crisis response team didn't not exist formally. Whole that period they doing illegally, because there is no decision about their foundation, and after whole that period, and in October, it means more or less at the end of crisis, they formally found it. That put a very bad picture on the whole decisions in that period, because we don't know how is possible that some body which formally doesn't exist can make a proposals to the government, and government accept all of them without any question, and that produce different effects for whole society. That is something which is not allowed in as other countries. Serbia even is not a rich country, of course, but according to the model of other countries, Serbia would like to push that is some kind of political measures and I don't know, probably some kind of investment in the next elections. But Serbia made some economic measures to push different kind of companies, but with a limit or with a condition that they mustn't fire more than 10 of their employees. And of course, Serbia supported individuals, and in a first step it was for everybody. I think that sum was 100 euros, but after that Serbian government put some criteria which is connected with vaccination and some kind of persons and individuals, students and pensioners, and others, not for all. And when we have a problem with vaccination, then governments try to motivate the nation to go in a second circle and to go in a third circle and put them the money for that. As a conclusion, this whole situation with a not enough legal rules and with a practice which is not completely, but I think mainly not in according to the law. I think that we have a need in Serbia to make some special statute which will regulate that situation which caused with some kind of health problems, pandemic, etc. Because objective is that objectively we can expect in the future different kind of war of viruses, with the viruses. Then what is one conclusion also, that if we lifted the measures, we continue with that limitation of human rules, and it is not allowed in a state with the rule of law, and then for a future it must be avoided. Of course, some problems with a special regulation that was a forest of different kind of rules, and I said that different cities and local communities put some rules and without any information about them, and in the same time they don't have jurisdiction to punish their citizens, but they do that. And probably that is not in this conclusions, but very important that our constitutional court sleep almost whole that long period, and when everything finished, then they start to work their job, but everything was retroactive, and their first decision was very problematic, because declaration of state of emergency, according to the opinion of Constitutional Court and my personal colleague, was legal. Even we don't have a procedure and rules of procedure which fulfilled with their conditions. I think that government, because the aim was to avoid the National Assembly, didn't ask National Assembly, or didn't evaluate would the National Assembly can convene or can't convene. Just during the night take the jurisdictions for yourself and issued the state of emergency, and in a reason, for example, that there is a time for a parliament, and in that way, I think that conclusion is that This time for a state and society, and in the future I think that similar situation will repeat very soon. We can't expect protection of human rights and legal orders at all without active role of constitutional court. Thank you. That is all.